Jesse, you know what time it is. It's not Tuesday, but I wasn't here on Tuesday. And usually on Tuesday, we tier rank on Tuesday. It's tier rank. It's tacos.
As in, I think we did that
and tier
on
ranking.
one Tuesday, like several weeks ago.
But it is Thursday, and that does start with a T. And so that qualifies us to do a little tier ranking today. And we are going to tier rank one of my least favorite things in the whole wide world, which is anything about fantasy baseball.
Why don't you like fantasy baseball?
I do not like fantasy baseball. I've said that on this show multiple times. It's probably not a great thing for a host of a baseball podcast to admit. It is because, Jesse, I have other things in life that I like to do. I have other interests. I have, I like pro wrestling. I like the Phoenix Suns. I like spending time with my daughter. And you know what I don't have time for? Fantasy baseball. Because if I play fantasy baseball, I don't have time for all that other stuff. My entire life becomes all about fantasy baseball. And that is because I am a psychopath when it comes to playing fantasy sports. I won our fantasy football league, and that is because I am relentless when it comes to you guys have no idea how much I look over the numbers for this show. That pales in comparison to the amount of times I check the free agent waiver wire during the fantasy football season. So to say I obsess would be an understatement, and that's why it lands me into a lot of trouble with my wife. But we did decide that we should at least give you as much information as we could for you, if you enjoy fantasy baseball. I know this one over here likes it very much, on which Diamondbacks players are worth your time on a fantasy baseball team. So we're going to tier rank them. We got our tier maker here. Jacob's got us all set up. We got all of our Diamondbacks players. Look at those little soldiers all ready to go out there and fight in our little fantasy war. I can't wait for it. But yeah, we have all the Diamondbacks players, at least the guys we know people are going to be interested in fantasy-wise.
Sure.
So we decided that we would take a look at where we think they land on our tier maker scale here, going from S to D. Jesse, we got Zach Gallen up there at the top.
Sure.
Obviously, we're just going to start off with an S tier, right?
You're going S? My first thought.
Did you hear the questioning in his? I cannot wait to hear the words that come out of your mouth right now,
Derek.
Please.
Where did Zach Gallen finish in Cy Young voting?
Please, Jacob. I want to hear what he has to say. Jesse, go ahead. Say the but that you were about to say.
My first thought was I would put Zach Gallen in the A tier because he is certainly one of the top starting pitchers available. ESPN, I'm looking at their rankings for points leagues. They have Zach Gallen ranked 23rd, and that is a reasonably high ranking. Okay. However, I do think that there are some questions about how Zach Gallen will look coming off of throwing, nearly 250 innings and starting like 40 games between the regular season and the playoffs. I've seen some fantasy baseball discourse already about people maybe staying away or, maybe taking him a little bit lower than maybe they otherwise would have. Mm-hmm. The Diamondbacks do have a clear S tier player on their roster, and that's Corbin Carroll. And we might as well just put him up there right now.
Yeah, I mean, there's you're not going to get a debate out of me on that one either.
I think Corbin Carroll's clearly S. Zach Gallen, for me, I would maybe put it A for the reasons I described. But if you want to keep him at S, I won't gripe too much.
That's a hard one for me because I think here what we're talking about, if you're talking about fantasy players, is obviously production. And we know that Zach Gallen was very durable, has been very durable. He's one of those pitchers that you almost, know at least prior to last year, you always knew what you were going to get out of him. And I don't say like last year was a bad year for Zach Gallen. I just say from a fantasy perspective, you didn't know at one point if you could count on him or even start him for sure for an away game, right? And that's fair. Those splits were enough to keep you to say, maybe I don't want to start Zach Gallen tonight. So maybe Jesse's right. Maybe we bust Zach Gallen down to the A tier to be as realistic as we get. Look, we're not trying to pat him on the back here. We're hurting feelings tonight, and we're trying to get people's fantasy baseball teams to where they need to be.
You know what's even crazier?
What?
That I could almost put Merrill in S tier.
Oh, yeah, he's right there too.
For consistency's sake.
Yeah, I mean, Merrill Kelly has been incredibly consistent. At times, he was a better pitcher for this team than Zach Gallen even was. It's just, I don't want to say he has injury concerns, but the injuries that keep him at times or take him out of games are things that are it's weird. It's not like an injury. It's cramping, and he's going to continue most likely to have cramping issues if he's had them already, right? And the blood clots thing or something that could come back. And there is some concern there. I feel like in order for it to be an S tier player, it's a superstar that you feel fairly confident is going to be playing every time that their number is called, right? And I mean, Corbin Carroll is obviously going to have his off days, but if Corbin Carroll is playing, you're starting him. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah. I mean, I saw a list the other day that had Corbin Carroll ranked, I think, is the third best fantasy player in all of baseball. I think it was Ronald Acuna. Forgetting who the other guy was. They might have had Garrett Cole ahead of him or something. But yeah, like Corbin Carroll's fantasy potential is insane because, I mean, 25 homers, 54 stolen bases last year.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You know, batting average matters in certain leagues if you're doing like a categories kind of a thing. Batting average, you can count on home runs, RBI, certainly runs scored is a big thing for Corbin Carroll. So there's really nothing that Corbin Carroll can't give you. He is one of the best fantasy players that you could possibly have.
Are you guys categories guys or points guys?
I generally do points, but I will acknowledge that which one you are will definitely have an impact on how you would rank these guys for sure.
For sure. Merrill, though, I think I'm putting him at A.
You're putting him at A? All right. I'm okay with that.
Now, Eduardo, that's the one that I don't know. I mean, we've seen Eduardo already be incredible this spring, and we've also seen him struggle inexplicably. And
yeah, that first Cactus League outing didn't exactly inspire confidence, but it also didn't really matter. So.
Right. But if you are a person that is drafting fantasy guys, where are you taking? What round are you taking Eduardo Rodriguez in? How long are you letting him sit available, and when would you feel is an appropriate time to snatch him up? I feel like that dictates this tier ranking quite a bit.
Yeah, so I'm looking at ESPN's list. They have Eduardo Rodriguez ranked as the 164th best fantasy player, which is not high. There are many Diamondbacks players ahead of Eduardo Rodriguez on this list. I think a lot of it has to do with his underlying stats from last year in Detroit were not particularly strong. Sure. I think there are, as we've discussed, a 3.30 ERA I think is bullish moving forward. And there's also durability concerns there where, you know, he's around 150 innings last year. The year before, I know he stepped away from the team for a while. That was a big factor. He was around 100 innings the year before. So, yeah, I think knowing the innings, you can't necessarily count on too much. And you might be looking at more like a 4 ERA than a low 3 ERA. So yeah, I mean, I think based on this ESPN ranking, like I think C is maybe like where they would probably put him. But I'll let you decide, Derek. If you want to put him in the B category, I won't complain.
I think C is fair because of the unknown factor. We don't know what he is going to be for the Arizona Diamondbacks. I feel like he could be a sneaky acquisition for somebody potentially in a fantasy baseball league because he probably is going to drop down pretty low. You probably are going to get him in a later round. But he could essentially give you the same value as a guy in the first like 5 rounds potentially. I mean, I know that's probably bullish to say that, like you would say, but I think that there's the unknown factor of him being on a competitive team that he feels differently about, working with Brent Strom. What we've already seen out of him has been pretty good. So I mean, I feel like we don't know enough yet that I wouldn't be confident, taking him any higher than like a C ranking. Yeah. Meanwhile, Brandon Pfaadt, that's another guy that, I mean, we definitely have not seen a big enough sample size out of to feel confident about him being anywhere close to like an A pitcher. I might put Brandon Pfaadt right there at C as well.
Yeah, I think that's probably reasonable. And again, like if we put Eduardo Rodriguez at C, we're not saying Eduardo Rodriguez is like a bad player or whatever. Like fantasy baseball generally, I mean, if you have like a 10-team league with a 25-man roster, like you're generally dealing with like the best 250 players or something like that. Correct. So you're really looking at kind of the top half of the league here. So just to make that clear, Brandon Pfaadt on ESPN's list is number 300. They have a top 300 list, and Brandon Pfaadt is literally the very last one that made their list. So yeah, I think that it's a little bit intriguing because if you're in a bigger league where you would care to have someone like Brandon Pfaadt, there's certainly some potential there to get a whole lot more than the draft position that you're taking him at. Sure. So yeah, I think C is reasonable. Maybe right there with Eduardo Rodriguez, and it's not going to cost you much to draft him, and you might if Brandon Pfaadt comes out and has a 3.8 ERA for 180 innings or whatever, then that would be a pretty darn good selection.
Did you put him ahead or behind? Like, do you think he's here?
Behind him. Yeah, I'd put.
Oh, we're like doing ordering.
This is the way ASU's been doing it. I don't mind it because there's some depth to it.
The level of specificity.
I'm putting Erod above Brandon Pfaadt because of the track record. I feel like Erod's proven. Brandon Pfaadt had a really, really incredible 2-3 month run, but I feel like we need to see more out of him before we're declaring him to be a guy that that a fantasy baseball player would want to, draft early enough and have on their team. And like Jesse was saying, like that's why we don't have the entire roster here. We just kind of handpicked the guys we thought would be considered by fantasy players, and we threw them up here. We don't have any bullpen guys really up here except Paul Sewald and Kevin Ginkel. Now, Jesse, where do you rank? How valuable are saves? Because I'm ready to say something crazy. And that is that I feel like there is a chance that Paul Sewald could lead the National League in saves in 2024.
I don't think that's an outrageous. Like I could see a world where that happens. The Diamondbacks are not really the type of team you'd expect to be blowing teams out necessarily.
Correct.
They figure to play a lot of close games. They certainly did down the stretch and in the playoffs. And Paul Sewald was very good in those situations.
How valuable is that in fantasy baseball? The save stat.
Again, it's going to depend on the league. But in points leagues, like a Paul Sewald in the leagues that I played in would totally be someone I'd want on my team. ESPN for their points league ranking, they have him at 118th. So they have him as being more valuable than Eduardo Rodriguez. So I think a B ranking for Paul Sewald probably makes sense. He's not like that elite tier of closers. He's not a Josh Hader. He's not one of those guys who's going to strike out like 14 guys per 9 innings or whatever, but he's valuable for sure.
And you also have the fact that a lot of people in your league might forget about him. Like Paul Sewald's just kind of one of those guys that he's well respected around the league, but he's kind of not really a household name, even though he's a very, very good closer and deserves to essentially be a household name. So yeah, let's throw him up there at B. I think that's very fair. And let's talk about Kevin Ginkel and why Kevin Ginkel's value wouldn't be very high, because he's a reliever.
Yeah, and this is where fantasy baseball is just going to be valuing players very differently than we would in real life. Kevin Ginkel is arguably the most valuable
he's
relief
an
pitcher
man.
the Diamondbacks
he's
have.
A 5-star man.
Absolutely. But yeah, from a fantasy perspective, he's someone who probably wouldn't be highly sought after. Exactly. They have a top 75 list of just relievers, and he's 64th on their relievers list.
That's good to see him there. But he also has the like relievers. They don't get a lot of points in fantasy. So typically you're not going to have any reliever that doesn't have the potential of being a closer or currently is a closer. Now, that's probably where Ginkel's value could be, is if in some way maybe like
if he gets saves, that's when he becomes
if he gets
valuable.
saves. If for some reason Paul Sewald gets injured or is not available as their closer anymore, Paul Sewald could be tremendously valuable. Kevin Ginkel could be tremendously valuable. But right now, where he's at, he would probably be a D tier on this list.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And so would any reliever. Like there's no reliever really that's going to really move the needle here outside of Paul Sewald. So.
Yeah, it almost doesn't matter in most fantasy baseball formats. It almost doesn't matter how good of a reliever you are. If you're not getting saves, you're just like not really worth taking with how the system works. But yeah, if
you
an
could get
opportunity,
holds, but holds still wouldn't be worth that many points.
In a very niche league, like there are some leagues out there that probably do count holds, and yeah, Kevin Ginkel could be valuable in that scenario. But yeah, for most leagues, he's someone you'd keep an eye on if Sewald were to get hurt or struggle or whatnot. He's certainly someone you keep an eye on, but not someone you're probably looking to draft on day one.
Gabby, this is I'm
gonna put him in S tier.
I'm already angry. I'm already angry about wherever we put him, because wherever we put him isn't high enough. No, I mean, obviously Gabby has a lot still to work on. Gabby is not Corbin Carroll. Gabby is not a guy that is going to be an elite level fantasy player. But I mean, as far as filling your catching position, I don't feel like there's a lot of better catchers out there than Gabby Moreno.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely putting him in the top 10 as far as catchers go. And I think his production offensively could increase in 2024. I still think we're going to see more power out of him this year. And I mean, that's only because I watched this man foul off a ball and then hit the very next one for a home run. And I can't be told, I will not be told that this man will not have an amazing year with power numbers in 2024.
So I'm looking at catchers on this ESPN top 300 list. They have Rushman as the most valuable catcher. Mm-hmm. Then they have Will Smith. He's ranked 48th overall. And then they have William Contreras at 72nd. Contreras, yes, thank you.
Wilson Contreras.
They have Keibert Ruiz as the fourth best catcher, 93 overall. That's a little interesting to me.
Insane.
JT Realmuto is 5th. He's 109th overall. And then it is Gabby Moreno.
So he's
sixth most valuable catcher. He's at 122nd overall. Really right around Paul Sewald. I think B is kind of what makes the most sense to me here.
God damn it. Yeah, I know you were going to say B. All right, put him
there
in
is
B.
potential for like a really good value play where I don't think Moreno probably will get drafted outside the top 100 in pretty much all formats. But there is a world in which Gabby Moreno comes out and hits 20 homers or something if he really carries on what he did in the second half last year. And then you're looking at maybe him being right up there with Adley Rutschman as the most valuable catcher. Like I could at least envision a scenario like that. But yeah, he hasn't quite arrived to that point yet. So I think B is probably fair for right now.
Ketel Marte. Can we just put him in A?
I think we can put him in A.
Let's just put him in A.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to discuss any more than that. The man has been incredible. He set a major league record in the postseason. And I almost feel like at times that it's like, it's the competitive nature of the rest of the team. Like Ketel's output kind of matches what the team is doing at times. And like, it's not to say he hasn't had some incredible seasons when the team wasn't doing very well, but I don't know. I mean, Ketel now at this point in his career, I just felt like you saw him turn it up to another level when the Diamondbacks got to the postseason. And again, kind of like with Brandon Pfaadt, I mean, Ketel's a longer track record. I do feel like,
totally.
Like what we saw wasn't just like, kind of a fluke period of time. Like we've seen Ketel hit 320. We've seen Ketel be an incredible baseball player. So I think that what we saw in the postseason was just him really turning it on. And I think that with the way this team is constructed in 2024, we could see that all season long.
Yeah, they have Ketel as the 45th most valuable player in all of baseball, which is pretty high. I think A is totally fair here. They have him higher than Merrill Kelly, I think, by a pretty decent margin.
And he's hitting the cover off the ball right now out in spring training.
Yeah. He's hitting 600 in spring training, and it like feels sustainable, which I know it's an outrageous thing to say, but it's like, he probably will hit 600 for all of spring training. He looks locked in right now for sure. We'll have to see how it translates to the regular season, of course, but the track record is there. When he's healthy, he's really freaking good. And especially at second base, like there aren't that many second basemen that hit the way that Ketel Marte does. He's a valuable guy to target for sure.
These next four guys baffle me because I have no idea fantasy-wise where I want to put them or how much trust I want to put in them, right? You have Eugenio Suarez, who played 162 regular baseball season games last year. And that doesn't make any sense to me that any player would play all 162 baseball games for their team in a season. And the projections don't look good. Like the forecast for him, zips and things do not love Suarez in 2024. And I'm sure that the factors there are his age and just in general kind of a decline and such. But I don't know. I think that for the most part, when you talk about a guy that is going to play a lot, as long as he can stay healthy, Suarez is going to play probably 140 games over there at third base. And he is going to hit probably close to 30 home runs. So I feel like there's a lot of value there potentially for him. He's going to strike out a lot. I mean, we've even seen that already in spring training, but I do feel like there's value there. And I just don't know what to trust. Do I trust like a gut feeling that he's going to continue the way that he's played for the last 5 years? Or, I mean, are these forecasts right that he's going to kind of take a downturn in 2024?
Yeah, I mean, this is where I think the format of the league matters a lot. Like if you're in a league where strikeouts count against you, you probably don't want Eugenio Suarez on your team. Yeah. But if you're in a league that's like categories based, then Eugenio Suarez, last year he was up over 20 homers. He had nearly 100 RBI. The batting average isn't going to be great, but there's still value in having a guy who can give you, 25 homers and 100 RBI or something like that over the course of a season. So it definitely depends on the league. I would maybe put him in the C range.
I think he could go as high as B, or he could be what Fangraphs think he's going to be in more of like a D tier player.
Yeah,
right. Like,
but he's the kind of player where even if he has like a fairly bad season by his standards, he still could have at least a little bit of fantasy value in a categories league because as we saw last year, he still hit over 20 homers and had almost 100 RBI.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, so we have who do we have there left? We have Christian Walker, Lourdes, and Jock Peterson. Who would you like to start with here?
I think Walker's probably B for me.
Yeah. Defensively, one of the best first basemen in baseball. Period.
And that's not going to be factored in a fantasy environment, unfortunately.
It's not.
But he's still a player that is very much worth
So
having.
Outs above average or defensive run saved or anything like that, none of that stuff happens.
I mean, maybe like if there is a league out there like that, I want to be part of it.
We once did a category
same one
with every possible category.
It's the same one with holds.
I mean, like I haven't seen like ESPN is usually what I use, and I haven't seen them like. I don't think they even have DRS or OA or any of that stuff thrown in there. But yeah, ESPN has Walker 73rd on its ranking list, which is pretty good. Like you could maybe make a case for having him in the A tier. Really,
he's a 30 home run, 100 RBI guy on this team, and he's going to have to be in order for this team to be good. But I mean, with those guys hitting in front of him and all of those opportunities for him to drive in runs, I think he's going to be an offensive threat all season long as his hand is fine.
Right. Which it looks like it will be. So there you go.
Thank you for guys. I still feel great about this. All right, we got Jock and we got Lourdes. Let's be mean. I'm sure we're going to be mean to one of these guys. Jock, I have no idea. Again, Jock and Lourdes are both kind of like mysteries to me. I know what we got out of Lourdes last year. Can he repeat that? If he can repeat that, then is he a C level player as far as fantasy goes?
I mean, like if you had Lourdes in like the first 2 months last year and then you dropped him, like that, that's awesome. It's basically like you had Bryce Harper for 2 months or something.
Do it when I have purple hair, basically.
Exactly. Base your fantasy decisions off of Derek's hair for sure. I would probably put Lourdes in the C range. You could make a case for him in the B range. I think it's probably realistic. Between those two. He's at 151st on the player rater over at ESPN. I think Jock probably would be in the D category for me just because he's a platoon player and it's kind of hard to roster platoon players in fantasy baseball because they're just not playing every day. It would depend on the format. There are some leagues where you would maybe want Jock on your team, but kind of the most standard league, not a great fit.
Lourdes' career numbers tells me he's a B.
Say this again?
His career numbers tell me he's a B.
Yeah, because his career number says he's close to a 300 hitter, and like
there's a consistency factor there. I think I might buy that argument because he's someone who
he was very much under his career averages last year.
Did you just argue Jesse Friedman into giving? You just got him to bump up his grading curve?
You know what? You're right. I'm not. No,
Don't budge.
Put him in C.
Don't you dare budge.
There's something to be said in fantasy baseball for just kind of knowing what you're getting out of a guy. Yeah. Even if it's not that great necessarily.
But that's it, right? Like it's not the support. Like when your fantasy player goes out there and scores you the exact number of points that they projected he was going to score, it's a win, right? That's why you put him in the lineup. Your hope is he scores more, but that's a win. I feel Lourdes is one of those guys that would consistently deliver on the projected fantasy points, and that's hard to find sometimes because sometimes that's what screws you is the unknown. So
put him in B.
Put him in B. He's going in D. You did it, Jacob. Yes. All right, Jock can go in D.
Jock can go in D.
Well, and I think playing time is the consistency thing there for him. Like, it's not to say Jock might not be valuable at times for you, but you're just not going to be able to play him all the time. He's the kind of guy that gives me nightmares in fantasy baseball because he's the kind of guy that I have to look out for and actually change my lineup. Otherwise, I can just set my lineup for a week and be good and like everything's cool.
Yeah, if it's a week that locks like on a weekly basis, you probably don't want Jock Peterson because as we kind of project things out now, he might start 3 games and sit 2 or whatever. The other factor with him is that he might lose his outfield eligibility if the Diamondbacks don't actually play him in the outfield. And it's tough to roster guys who are DH only. They can only fit in that utility spot usually.
That's right.
That's another limiting
They need to
factor
change
with
that about fantasy baseball now. They're all DH is the rule. DH is the thing. There should be a DH period. Forget that.
Or
Utility
teams could
role.
just give some consideration to all the fantasy baseball players in the universe and just like play players like out of position every now and then.
There you go.
Just so that those players become
Good
eligible.
utility. Yeah.
Just do us all a favor.
Do us a
right?
solid, man. Do us a solid.
Like we need Jock Peterson at shortstop. Like not for the whole season, just like a
two
handful of games.
Yeah, 2
you know?
games. 2 games. Enough for him to be considered a utility infielder.
As a disclaimer, it did not include Jerry P because I couldn't listen to Jesse tell me that he's a D-level player.
Alec Thomas too.
Perdomo and Thomas are just guys that, you know, we can talk up all we want about how they could have great seasons and Perdomo was an all-star and all that, but you know, people are just not going to be selecting those guys in at least the majority of formats.